I've been gone so long, I think that I've forgotten some of my passwords, so I'm just trying to catch up with email right now. It took me for quite a while to crack that when I came in this morning, and there were a lot of messages there. I thank you for being with me today, and I want to thank Steve Millington and Benito Baeza for sitting in the last couple of days while I was away. Sweating it out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Somebody has to do it. We have to keep the economy going in a lot of these resort towns. I'm going to share a couple of thoughts about my trip, though, because, you make observations when you're away and you're out and about, and you see how the other side lives, and sometimes you wonder if they really practice what they're preaching. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Some of the other things that we have coming up on the program today. Medical professionals from Trip Family Medicine on the way in about 20 minutes. Also, in about an hour and 10 minutes, we're going to be joined by a representative of the Red Creek Fire District who's going to, Rock Creek. Red Creek reminds me of something that would be running by my house, the Rock Creek Fire District, and talk a little bit about some issues they have. And this has been ongoing, and that's on the way. And it's really a pitch to the public because we do have some necessary services out there. You do have to have people who come rescue you when you've got, a problem or put out a fire and the like. So that's on the way a little bit later in the program. First, though, I want to tell you a little bit about my excursion, which had a wonderful time. I managed to get up on one of the trails. It's called the Lawrence Rockefeller. Now, keep in mind, Lawrence Rockefeller, if it's the one, there may be more than one Larry Rockefeller, but in 1990 or so, I was living in New York State, and Al D'Amato was one of our incumbent U.S. senators, maybe 1992, I guess it was. And D'Amato was running for re-election as a Republican when he got challenged by this fellow named Lawrence Rockefeller, who, much like the other members of his family, Republican in name only. He was very, very liberal. He was an environmentalist, and I was in this part of the Grand Teton National Forest, and it's named after Lawrence Rockefeller, which leads me to believe he had some money dumped into this, and there's a little conference center in a field in the middle of the park bearing his name. So it's another one of these monuments to his family name, and it sits there in the middle of this beautiful meadow with the mountains in the background. It's a great scene. I stopped there and I was going to go for a walk along the trail. There's a trail to one of the lakes, and I was walking down the trail and literally could hear running water just on the other side of some trees, so I couldn't wait to see the lake when I suddenly noticed that there was a sign that said that there had been bear sightings in the area. There had been bear sightings, in fact, for about the last 5 weeks on average every second or third day. I didn't have any bear spray with me, and I noticed it had been 3 days since the last sighting, so I figured the odds were probably not with me. I turned around and I walked back out of that particular area. But I got to drive around a lot of the park, and it really is a spectacular place to visit. And when I was done, I was leaving, and I came upon a meter at the bottom of this hill. It sits right by one of the roads, and the meter has been placed there by the National Park Service. And there's an explanation that says it's being done as an experiment to test and see just how much noise pollution there is in the national park. So I got out and I walked up to the thing and I said, boo. And I pegged about 40 decibels on the meter. And then a pickup truck went by, which had a diesel engine. The sound of a diesel engine is generally, it purrs a little differently than a gasoline engine. And it went up to about 65. And I thought, that's probably still not bad. But you know what's going on here, don't you? Why are they even doing this study? Well, because they need justification to claim that automobiles in the park are creating so much noise pollution that the bears, that the moose, that the muskrat, that the ducks, that the birds of the air, the red-tailed hawks, that none of them can reproduce because, oh golly, the noise disturbs them so much. So therefore, we're going to have, because we're stressing them out, we're going to have to remove automobile traffic. And eventually they'll say, well, it might be a better idea just to remove people altogether. We'll seal all of this off, we'll call it Forever Wild, and we'll bar the American public from using the park. I can see it happening. Well, when you look at land uses across the West already, you're seeing this effort to push us off the land, and they don't want you in certain areas. And yet, right next to the park, and those of you who've been there, and I know a great many of you have been there probably many times. I'm a tourist. It was my very first visit, so I have I'm all wide-eyed while I'm doing this. But while I was there, I noticed there was an airport right next to the park. I also was there when I saw some big jets taking off, and these were they're not maybe, 747s or 767s, but some of them are quite large. Now, who is using the airport in Jackson Hole? Why is it there? Well, not the Latino women who were changing bed sheets at my hotel, and not the Eastern European kids who are running the cash registers at the grocery stores that I encountered. You come across quite a United Nations in one of these towns. No, the people who are using that airport are Washington high rollers, lobbyists, politicians, and the like, as well as Hollywood liberals. So a plane taking off. Now, again, 40 decibels when I said boo, 65 decibels when a Ford F-350 drove by. How many decibels do you think a jet aircraft is creating? And yet nobody is, well, they're not saying boo at all about the air traffic next door. So it's bad for people like you and me. We're considered to be weeds, invasive species, to be using the park because of the noise pollution. And yet all of the swells, Richie Rich and his brother, they are allowed to fly in and out of there on jets. Doesn't anyone see some sort of a contradiction there? So they want to push you out of the parks and have you all just go downtown and wait on them, change their bed sheets, wait on them at the cashier's stand, or wait on their tables when they're out eating in their expensive restaurants. But that's the only time that they want to see you because, you are repugnant to them. I also noticed that if you go around town, and this is likely related to zoning rules, I went to a Maverick to buy gas, and the Maverick looks like, well, a chateau. And then I went to the K-Mart. I just wanted to go look around in there. You could barely see the sign. It's very tiny, so they can't have large signage. And then the store it's got this wooden exterior, very expensive, because apparently the wealthy, they don't like to look at the wealthy liberals don't like to look at a regular Kmart. It offends them. Now, the parent company, Sears, is going bankrupt, and they don't know what to do with all of their properties. But if people are making them put these expensive facades up front, no wonder they're going bankrupt. So you're going to eliminate a place not only where a lot of poor people work, but where a lot of poor people shop, because the liberals don't like the looks of it, or the traditional look of it. And then I went into the local Albertsons. I wanted to look around inside the local Albertsons. So I picked up a couple of small things, and I went to the checkout, and the young Russian man who was manning the checkout gave me this green bag that looked to be plastic. And I thought, they're using plastic bags here. I'm surprised. But it's sort of a pea green. I mean, it is a really pale green color. And I got back to the hotel, and I looked at the bag, and it says Echo Hippo. Well, I don't know why hippo was on there. There's nothing to do with hippopotamuses. But as I was looking all of this over, and I was thinking to myself, what's different about this bag? Well, it reads on the bag, and you can read about all my experiences or some of my experiences at our website, newsradio1310.com, or at our Facebook page, newsradio1310. And I've been mentioning my thoughts about all of this and what I saw there, and how this is really, it shows you how liberals are simply out to bankrupt the poor, because these bags, they're made from some eco-friendly material, in other words, recycled waste and things like that. And then they somehow color them green because, well, green's good. But they're very, unlike a regular plastic bag, they don't have any give to them. They're almost brittle to the touch. And I made a discovery, and that is that they break open very easily. My guess is they're more expensive. It says they don't give off as many emissions as even a paper bag, but that these are very expensive to produce. Now, when I lived back east, I used to love to shop at a store called Harris Teeter and another place called Wegmans. And if you took your own bags to the store, you would get a discount on your shopping. Now, it wasn't much, but it tells you that, yes, you're being charged for the cost of the bags. So if you're getting paper, and a lot of people think that that's more environmentally friendly, although Danny Wegman himself, who runs that grocery chain, once told me during an interview, a paper bag buried in a landfill will last there for 1,400 years. If you stack up a bunch of these plastic bags in a landfill, they may last, well, forever. So, in either case, it's a long, long time. And so I understand how this works. But the plastic bags, which are petroleum based that we are using, they run, they're very cheap to make. And they're very useful too. People use them for multiple uses. I can take them home after groceries and I put them away, but then I'll sometimes pack lunch in them. I'll do things like that. So I'm recycling them. But these eco bags, which obviously are more expensive to produce, are likely being factored into the grocery costs. Now, the guy who actually wanted the store to do this over there, the wealthy liberal who's driving his Range Rover, he's not having to cut back because he's worth so much money. His expensive groceries doesn't bother him. But again, if you're among the poor people over there in the service workers community, this is eating away at your very meager earnings. I was watching Hillary Clinton yesterday when she gave a speech in Florida along with Al Gore, and she was saying by 2020, she expects she's going to reduce domestic oil consumption by 1/3 in this country. And yet the economist Harry Dent is predicting that by next year, oil will be only $8 a barrel. It is going to be dirt cheap. You're talking about 70 cents a gallon for gasoline, if not less. You're talking about cheaper ways to heat your home. And yet the liberals are pushing these things. They're already talking about building more wind farms. If you go to the website today of the Daily Signal, you will see that the average wind farm, well, there's one being built right now off the coast of Rhode Island at a cost of $300 million. They've factored in what it's going to cost every household that it serves. Every household, the cost is $17,500. How does that benefit poorer Americans who have to foot the bills for all of these things? This is the point I'm making today, and that is that liberals, they want you to fund their utopian views. And yet it's going to cost you dearly, and it's only going to help you stay in poverty. I'm telling you, this is a very, very dangerous time we live in, and all the more reasons to consider or reconsider what you're doing on election day. Normal men do tell dirty jokes. I hate to tell you that. And in fact, if they don't do that, sometimes I'm worried about those guys who don't. I think they're going to be the ones climbing up atop a clock tower with a scope and rifle. And if that's the guy's greatest offense, what are we worried about? When you stop and you think about the world that the liberals are crafting for us and plan to continue crafting for us, they are not working for your benefit. Weigh that with your concerns about a guy with a potty mouth and see what decision you come to. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I've got more coming up in just a couple of minutes and perhaps some reaction from all of you. Oh, another thing quickly I want to mention today as well. There's a piece by a writer named Richard Berman in the Washington Times, and he says he's found a causal, that is, data that backs it up, that higher minimum wage is forcing restaurant chains out of business. But again, it's only the poor we're impacting. Who cares? Details coming up in just a few minutes on KLIX. I mentioned Dr. Jonathan Tripp or one of his associates scheduled a visit with us in just a few minutes. So if you've got a medical question or two about wellness visits, or really just a medical question about any topic, I guess, that's on your mind, feel free to give us a call at 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Wellness visits is his main subject today, but not only for your kids, but for mom and dad as well, and for some of the older folks. That's on the way in just a few minutes, and of course, he is looking for new patients, and you can find his office on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office in Twin Falls. I wanted to also mention, if I could quickly, big event coming up. There's 3 big events that I've been invited to this weekend. One is the 4th annual Anything Potato event taking place at the Twin Falls County Fairgrounds. That starts Saturday from 5:30 until 8. Now, not 5:30 in the morning. That's 5:30 in the afternoon. I'm sure most of you don't get out of bed to go to a festival that early. You can sample all the potato dishes, and you can vote for your favorite potato soup, salads, desserts, and more. This is a fundraiser for the Twin Falls County Fair Foundation to make improvements at the fairgrounds. By the way, our telephone number, as I mentioned, 736-0300. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. This is all part of the elitist Agenda 21. I guess there's Agenda 2030 now. The update is to just create half of the U.S. into a game preserve. And what you're saying this morning is just adds more to the information that I already had. But it's all about creating global government, the elitists in control, and the rest of us just being slaves on the plantation. And of course, they think there's too many of us. So under Obamacare, already I'm talking to friends that they're eliminating a lot of coverages, so that they have these death panels basically already in place. And so this whole thing, like I say, as far as voting is concerned, yes, potty mouth Trump. Certainly he has some indiscretions, but compared to Hillary, my gosh, folks, better wake up.
Yeah.
She has got a track record that, it's totally the mainstream media is just covering her on everything. So, folks, we got two choices: Trump, that'll probably do some good things and make America better. Hillary will just continue to destroy this country with environmentalism and liberal judges, the whole kit and caboodle.
Well said, and I thank you much for the telephone call. And a sound meter, if you're looking to see if there's going to be damage to the national park, then put the meter over by the airport. Don't stick it by a little 2-lane road with no shoulders in the middle of the dang park. See, they're setting this up to get the result that they want. This is the old Edward Bernays theory, along with Hegel, which is you create the problem, then you amplify the problem, and then you provide the solution. Government is very, very good at that. I'm going to talk a little later in the program about a theory a friend of mine has relating the scary clown phenomenon around the country, which people are getting all worked out, which is ridiculous. This is this year's flesh-eating bacteria, or pit bulls with AIDS, or whatever else, or shark attacks. And yet, he also says if you look around, Democrats, big name entertainers who are Democrats and people in the Democrat Party are referring to Trump as a clown. In other words, the subliminal association they want you to make there. Think about that for a moment. I'm going to get into some depth on that shortly. Well, a little later in the program. I shouldn't say shortly at this point, but it's something I'd like to touch upon. Also, whoever is elected president is going to have a whole mess to deal with. When I mentioned earlier that economist Harry Dent says look to a price of $8 a barrel for oil next year, why will it be that cheap? Because demand will be so low. Why will demand be so low? Because a lot of factories and other places that use a lot of oil are going to be closing down. Peter Morici, also an economist, has a column at the Washington Times about the next financial crisis, and he says it's at our doorstep. We're not hearing a lot about it because they feel that you're not bright enough to understand. It's easier to tell people, oh, Trump said something naughty about women. He used locker room talk. Bad, 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 bad. We liberals would never do that. No, we've neutered ourselves and we don't have any interest in the opposite sex. No. But what's really important, some bank in Germany called Deutsche Bank, which is a central bank in that country, is going belly up. And Morici says when that happens, the ripple effects across the globe are going to be tremendous. Meanwhile, Harry Dent says China's economy is slowing way, way down, and China is now saddled with a great deal of debt, ours too. We should point out all of these governments that can't afford to dig their way out any longer. You've got that problem going on. You got that whack job President Obama who canceled the Mars mission when he became president, now saying we're going to do it again, even though we've got $20 trillion in debt. You got all of these people out there talking these big games about how this is going to happen. Wall Street Journal has an editorial today, a transatlantic revolt against central bankers. Everyone sees what's on the horizon, and yet, oh, Trump made crude jokes about women. He's unfit for public office. We need to have somebody in there who's going to do the same old, so we can destroy the economy and have another Great Depression and keep you off the public lands and starve you to death. That'll be the best thing for you, and then we can save Mother Earth. I'm so sick of these people. Of course, that's what they believe in, Mother Earth, which is why you've got Hillary Clinton and her staffers making fun of evangelical Christians and Roman Catholics because they think it's all just superstition. Dr. Jonathan Tripp or one of his associates on the way in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX.